Hello again, everyone. You're welcome. Happy New Year. Have we spoken this year? I'm not sure. If we have, then Happy New Year once again. If we haven't, then Happy New Year. Happy New Year to everyone from AFCON, the African Football Scouts and Coaches Association. It's our AFC TV show, which we intend to bring you regularly on a periodic basis. I won't tell you how often, but it will be often enough for you to learn a lot. AFCON. This is the African Football Scouts and Coaches Association, an association that has been created to give identity, credibility, and respect to high-level scouting and coaching in Africa by Africans. We are determined to Africanize our game, to make sure that people actually resonate with the game in Africa the way we like it played, in a way that will result in success in the long run. Enough of the fact that, enough of mediocrity. Africa deserves better, and we are determined and committed to bringing better to the world of football through Africa. Our program will always be anchored and co-anchored and attended by our guests. Our members will be members of AFCON, will be prominent at the forefront of our programs, and we will have the occasional guest who will come in and share knowledge and share expertise with us. Sometimes that guest will be a member and an expert as well at the same time put together. Who knows? The latter part of last year, we concentrated on Africa in the World Cup in Qatar, where we talked a lot about the participation and the success or otherwise of African teams taking part in Qatar. Now, before I go, remember, if you want to subscribe, now I'm not even going to say if, I would say subscribe to us at AFCON AFC on our YouTube channel. Subscribe to AFCON by just going on AFCON YouTube page, subscribe, and click the notification button so that when we're coming back again, you'll be the first to know. We are also available and open on all the social media networks. I'm talking YouTube, I'm talking LinkedIn at AFCON, I'm talking Twitter at AFCON, and Instagram at AFCON as well. To join AFCON, just send an email, your name, your number, your details to join at afcon.com. I've spoken enough. I've spoken a bit too much for everybody. Now it's time to introduce people who are with me on the show. I've got with me on the show today my able director is where I'm going to start from. Never used to start from him, but today it's a new year, it's a new time, and I'm going to start with my able director, Niran Atobatele, who has put a lot of work into this happening on a regular basis. And I will always say, kudos to you. Thank you for your effort, and you're welcome to the show.
Welcome, everybody. Nice to see you guys once again. Actually, President, this is our second episode this year. Yeah, we had one earlier. The earlier one was this year. So it's nice again, and it's nice to actually be talking something more insightful about the game today. And I can't wait for it to experience what we have today, especially with someone who is in a big position as Tom also on the show tonight.
Excellent. Now, we also have as our guests, we've got our regular in-house guest, Coach Francis Okufi. Francis, I don't even know. England-based, Nigeria-based. I always say this because it's always the same. I can't say Happy New Year to you because Nina has just reminded me that we have spoken this year. But say something to our fans, Francis.
Yeah, Happy New Year to everyone. I hope we all have a prosperous year, and I hope we enjoy our football this year. Nice to meet you all again.
Excellent. We have got also in-house. He is an in-house member. He is a member of AFCON, has been for some time. We've been trying to drag him onto the show for quite some time, but he's a bit too busy for us, I think. Nnamdi Emefo. Now, Nnamdi is, correct me if I'm wrong, a software developer, very, very passionate about sports analytics, football performance analysis, developing software to capture performance analysis and talent ID ideas for our game. Nnamdi is a brain. When you look at him, don't see him the way he is. He's got quite a brain on him. Nnamdi, you're welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm very, very honored to be here. Thank you.
And last but not least, I call him the White African. That's Coach Tom Saintfiet. He's a White African because he's refused to stay back in Belgium. He loves Africa so much, and he has coached in a lot of countries in Africa. Tom, coach of the Gambia national team, Belgian, but breathing, living, and actually live in Africa because he's married to an African woman and has an African daughter. Tom is very, very well versed and committed to the growth of the game in Africa by Africans. Tom, if you are hearing us, you're welcome.
Thank you very much, Tunde. It's always a pleasure to be here, and I would like to wish everyone, first of all, a fantastic 2023.
Now, I kind of knew that we were having a few problems with Tom and his network because when he signed on. So I'm sure he'll come back to us in good time. Now, let's get to the show, Niran. Niran, when all through the time we did the last few shows, all we talked about was Africa in Qatar. How did we perform in Qatar? How did we behave? But let's face it, AFCON was not set up for us to do in Qatar. AFCON was actually set up to enhance the capacity and the knowledge base of coaches and scouts in Africa. So the topic for today, don't you agree with me that this is the way we should be going?
Yes, I think we're doing good. Things are working out, and in lieu of that African Qatar show that we had, let me just congratulate the 5 Africans who have been named among nominated for various FIFA Best Awards. Because of the World Cup, there were 3 Moroccans in the list: Regragui, Hakimi, what's his name? Hakimi, Regragui. There's another Bono, the goalkeeper, Yasin Bono, and also we had also have Sadio Mane and Salah, almost regular appearances in those kind of awards. So for us to have 5 nominees in almost all the male categories: goalkeeper, best male footballer, best manager. So I think it's a good one, and we're looking forward to more success for the continent.
It shows that we are doing something near right. It's not perfect yet, but we're doing something right, and we can expand on it. We can make it better by creating what we have called creating a coaching culture and a playing philosophy for Africa that will bring even more Sadio Mane's, even more Achraf Hakimi's out, but also even more Walid Regragui's out of Africa. So definitely. Now, congratulations to all those ones. What we also have got is a scenario where we want to look at coaching tactics, coaching techniques, and strategies in the game of football. And we want to look at it because we want to enhance, we want to empower, we want to enhance the knowledge base of our members in terms of their understanding of the game. Because one of the things that we have found out over the months is that a lot of us, even in governance areas, even in administrative areas of the game, we tend to accept whatever comes to us from the governors, from the administrators, from the bosses, because we don't know any better. The more we know, the more questions we will be able to ask as to why things are the way they are. And we think that this is now the time for us to start asking questions on why things are the way they are. On the tactical field, we will be breaking down various special subjects and specific areas of tactical football in our game. Today, we're starting with one, but before we go into the generic one, Tom, can you hear us now? Hello, Tom?
Oh yeah, sorry, I can hear you well. I can hear you. Do you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. It's not great, but we can hear you. Tom, what are your findings about the game of football being played in Africa in terms of how when you played in Europe, in Belgium, you came into Africa and you found a completely different mentality, a completely different mindset. How did you marry it together to make that change?
Naturally, I arrived in Africa in 2008 as national team coach of Namibia.
Tom, we can't hear you. We can't hear you at all. We cannot hear you. Can we all mute and see whether that works? Today's show, we can't hear Tom.
Sorry, Tom. Sorry, can I just say something? Tom, please try and maybe log off and use another equipment, maybe your phone, iPad, something else to log in, so that maybe that will be better.
Okay. Now, let's not waste too much time. Today, we want to talk about the defense. You know that the bedrock of the game, the foundation of the game is in the defense. And the defense, we start from the back to front, even if we want to score goals. That is one of the basic principles of coaching. And therefore, we want to talk about something that has evolved over the years. We're talking about the back four or a back three. When I say a back four, there is where we play three at the back, three center backs with wing play, three center backs like that, with right and left wing players as a means of attacking to go up front and play games. Or some prefer four at the back, where we've got four players at the back and we play 4-3-3. This was Chelsea's formation, or the pretended formation yesterday, which didn't work out. But they play 4-3-3. They play four at the back. Which one would you say, Francis? Which one would you say is most effective in your view?
I can't really say one is more effective than the other. I think as a coach, I would go personally with my strengths and then the opposition. I remember very well we had one game where we would always play in 4-4-2. And I think that the opposition kind of sussed that that's what we were going to play with. What we did was we completely shocked them and we reverted to a 3-4-3. They didn't really know what caught them. I mean, by halftime, we were like 3-0 up. And then even our players, being that we practiced it in training, that this is what we were going to do on the Saturday. So they were kind of ready for it. And we had, because in our team, we sort of had three centre halves, which were very comfortable, and they just wanted to defend. So we thought, okay, with this game, we're just going to play those three centre halves, which is all they want to do is defend, put the creative players in the midfield, two of the strikers up front. One was a big lad, one was pretty speedy. And it worked for us in that. We tried it a couple of more times, and then there were other teams where they kind of sussed us out, so we had to go back to our normal formation of a 4-4-2. So I think it really depends on the personnel you have and the opposition. But either way, I don't mind.
But as a coach, you will have a preference.
Preference, I would go 4-4-2.
So preference, you go with 4 at the back, flat back
Yes.
4.
Yes.
Tom, an experienced coach, who has coached all the way to AFCON level, what will be your preference at the back? 4 at the back or a 3 at the back?
Yeah. First of all, I have to agree a little bit with Francis that the fact it all depends on the players available and the opponent. I have to say, when I was with Young Africans in Tanzania, you were there when we won the CECAFA Cup. It's a little bit the Champions League of East and Central Africa. We played with 3 in the back, with wing backs going up, because that quality of the players I had available. The last years with Gambia and some other countries, I played with 4 in the back. For me, the formation, if it's 4-2-3-1, 4-3-3, 4-4-2, has not so much influence, or 5-3-2 has not so much influence on being defensive or attacking. It's the individual roles of players in the team and how they execute it, what makes if you are more defensive. You can play with 3 strikers and play very defensive football, and you can play with 3 defenders and with 5 defenders and play very attacking football. So it really depends. Every coach has to make an analysis. If you have wing backs who are very offensive but have a little bit lack of defensive qualities, I would go with a 5-man defense where wing backs can go very offensive. But if you have wing backs who are not so strong in the offense and better defending, you could go with 4 in the back. So every coach has to analyze the capacity of his players and also compare that with the opponent. So for me, it changed according situations. I play different systems, different roles. Currently, my favorite system is in a 4-2-3-1 system, and that can be also very defensive if needed, but can be also very offensive.
Now, from your knowledge of African football, Tom, and I'm going to go into the analytics of it with Nnamdi very shortly, but from your knowledge and your experience of African football, especially in Gambia, where you have had huge, tremendous success, considering where they were before and where they are now, where do you see the strengths of Africa? You know, if you look at the strengths of Africa.
Yeah, first of all, I think if I have to look at the last 14 years I'm working in Africa, I think African football develops very fast. 15 years, 20 years ago, Africa had star players, and that was the most important thing of African teams. Currently, every position in the team, you have good players. The development is going very fast. You have very good goalkeepers, good defenders, good midfield players, both defensive and offensive, good wingers and good strikers. So it's African football getting much closer to Latin American football, much closer to European football, because in the past it was that individual talent of a striker, a number 10 or a winger. Now you get on all positions the quality. I think still that there's a lot of quality offensive, that there's a lot of power and technical skills. Looking to Gambia, I have really a huge choice in offensive players. Most of the time on the wing, I can select eight 8 top wingers who play in Europe on a high level. But in defensive part, I have less opportunities. I have 4 or 5 defenders who play on a good level, and 2 or 3 wingbacks who play on a good level. So I think the focus still in African football, at least the exponents we see in Europe, are most of the time still the offensive players. But there are so many also quality players. Think about Koulibaly, think about Ndidi, players who can play in defense, players who play in the midfield, who have more defensive tasks. And that's something really from the last years. I think African football developed in a very good way that you can now play. Look to Morocco, but look also to Ghana, Cameroon, and Senegal on the last World Cup. They are teams who can compete with the best because every position has a top player playing in top leagues. And even on the bench, you have players. That's the biggest development. But I think the biggest focus, and you see that also when we mention for the best, the Salahs, the Sadio Manes, and all the other guys are most of the time offensive players. So the biggest quality is still, I think, in the attack.
Niran, you grew up in Nigeria, and I know quite a bit about Nigerian football. Francis, you would also agree with me that for many, many years, not many coaches wanted to go away and back from or at the back. Not many wanted to depart from four at the back because the two big boys here. I remember the 1994 Clemens Westerhoff days. The boys here are big boys. You know, they wouldn't shift base. And then we had the right wing, Yisa Shofolue. I think it was Francis, you correct me. And on the left will be Ben Iroha. Am I right? Yes. So Niran, when we think about what has happened over the years, that evolution of 4 at the back going to 5 at the back, coaches that have coached in some of these countries have been reluctant to shift and actually follow the principles that Francis and Tom have talked about, which is first of all, look at the opposition. First of all, look at the strength of your team in determining whether you're going to go with 4, a flat back 4, or with 3-man center defense. What do you think?
Yes. While in some ways I agree with Tom and Francis, but I don't think I think there are managers. For example, when you look at someone like Conte, Conte feels comfortable in the back 3, so he sticks to it. Wherever he goes, he sticks to it. I remember when he first came to Chelsea, you're a Chelsea fan, so I'm sure you would know. When he first came to Chelsea, I remember he was in the back 4. He started with the back 4, and they were struggling. And things were not working out. Although he had the players for a back 4, not a back 3, but then he couldn't really cope with. He didn't have the tactical nose of a back 4. So along the line, after some bad form, he had to change back to a back 4, to a back 3. Sorry, what he knew best. So in some cases, I think some coaches prefer to go with what they know best. What they know best, because they believe that what they know best, because they know how to coach it, they feel comfortable doing it. I know when things like that are happening, it's going to reverberate back into the team. The players will feel it working and things are going well. But when you're doing something that you don't really know, the players will also know that you don't really know it, and it's going to affect their progress. So I think Nigeria the back 3 formation was actually very popular in Italy a long time ago. It wasn't really popular all over the world. It was just popular, I think, in Italy in those 90s that you were talking about. So I don't Nigeria didn't have Italian coaches. We would not have Italian coaches, so that's probably why we stopped. And maybe those coaches were comfortable playing in that back 4. Maybe that's what they know best. That's how they know it. But of course, there's nothing wrong if you understand perfectly a back 4 and understand perfectly a back 3. Of course, you should do it based on the players you have at your disposal. But for some coaches, they are very comfortable. They believe they know everything that's concerning playing a back 3, and so they will stick with it. And some believe they know exactly what's good with the back 4, and then they will also stick with it. That's what I feel.
Right. Now, Francis, we've talked about that. The importance of the back three. A lot of people feel, like Tom has just said, a lot of people feel like if you're playing in a back three with a back three and then with wing backs, you are sitting back. It is because you want to be defensive. That's the general perception of people. So I remember when I was working with the Nigerian national team, when we put together a team list, and you know there are 200 million coaches in Nigeria. And I'm waiting for Tom to find out that at some point in the future. Now, 200 million coaches in Nigeria, and all of them, the moment you put out the team sheet and you've got 3 people at the back, and then just, wing backs like that, immediately that happens, everybody is talking. Everybody is talking about, why are you going defensive? You're Nigeria. You're playing against, I don't know, whichever country. Why are you going? This is a defensive formation. And they believe that it is a defensive formation. Now, for a back 4 or a back 5, how defensive really? Can you educate our viewers? Can you educate our viewers on how defensive really is a back 5? Is it really defensive? Does it define a defensive nature and pattern of play?
A back three doesn't define defensive. It means more that you're more attacking. You use it to your strengths. Belgium actually use a back three. So if Belgium uses a back three, you call that defensive, then where's the De Bruyne and all the others? Finland use a back three as well. North Macedonia use a back three. None of those teams can be considered defensive. They're more offensive because it's more like getting the ball back quicker from the opposition and creating an attack. So a back three is definitely not, in my view, it's not defensive, it's more creative, because all you've done is you've released one more player to go forward rather than having one more player sit back. So I wouldn't consider that defensive.
Now, in the area of a back 5, as we call them, a back 5 or a back 3, what we have now found, and we're going to tackle this subject at a time in the future, but just touching on it a little bit, when you have a back 3, you will have wing backs. Those wing backs in today's world, in today's football, a lot of them are now very good going forward, bombing up the lines like that. Ashraf Hakimi, I can think of Ben Chilwell, can't think of any other because Ben Chilwell plays for Chelsea, of course. And it's kind of, you can see they go forward and leave the back pretty much exposed, so to say. How do we make sure that the wing backs that we have got are the wing backs that can actually track back and complete the defensive job as and when it's needed? Because these days, like when we were in Nigeria, when we were coaching Nigeria, we converted players like Victor Moses, because Conte converted Victor Moses, who was an attacking player. When I knew Victor Moses at the age of 16, he was a number 10. Then later on, he dropped to the wing, and he played on the wing for Wigan Athletic, for Charlton Athletic, and for Chelsea. And he was playing on the wing for Chelsea and Liverpool and all that. And then Conte brought him back and put him on the right wing as a right wing back. The guy almost ran to death because he wasn't used to it. But then that's what the coach wanted, and that's what he gave him. But eventually, in order to win the title for Chelsea that year, he put in a very good shift. Now, we're losing that in the context of the fact that not many are doing that job. That is, doing the defensive job as well as they're doing the attacking job. How do we strike that balance as a coach? What do you tell your player when you want him to be flexible, to be versatile, to be able to combine the both? Like if you're doing 4-4-2, he can play up on the wing, but if he's doing a 3-5-2 or a 3-4-3, he's got to be able to remember that he's also got a defensive shift to put in.
Yeah. First of all, I have to agree with Francis that playing with three in the back is sometimes more offensive strategy than with four in the back. Naturally, when you lose the ball, you have always the three as security to recover the ball, even if the wing backs don't come back. Yeah, the problem of these modern football with five in the back, with three in the back, is that, and that's not something modern. Many times wing backs are competitive players. 1982 Belgium with Eric Gerrits, former player from Milan and PSV Eindhoven captain when they won the Champions League. He was in the past a winger, and he became one of the best right wing backs from Belgian football. Belgian national team, by the way, Holland, they played in the last World Cup all with three in the back, and Belgium had maybe a player like Meunier, who is a more defensive orientated player who played for Dortmund, but also Yannick Carrasco, who is a very offensive player who played for Atletico Madrid, is used on that position. I think, first of all, depends what you want in a game. What I notice is if you go really for a striker who play in frequently still as a winger or a striker, it will be giving for sure problems in coming back. So if you play weaker opponents, it will be not so big problem that you have a very offensive player fulfilling that role, and when he is not back, the opponent will be too weak to use the opportunities, and the three defenders and probably the opposite wing back will come back in time. But if you play a strong opponent, it has naturally risks when you use Victor Moses, when you use Carrasco, and sure, in national team level where they maybe at club level don't have the same role, and when you convert them then more defensively. So it will be very important as a coach to choose your wing back in a five-man defense according to the opponents. If you play a very strong opponent where you have to defend more, then you go for a little bit more defensive wing back, and maybe the old-fashioned wing back who played also in the four-man defense. If you play against a weaker opponent, you can take the risk and use the winger as a wing back. Very important in everything is naturally how you explain things to players, not of the day of the match, but the days and the weeks before, how you do it in the tactical meeting room as a team, as an individual, as compartment and individual, but also how you explain it during training sessions. What is your role? How deep you go back? Some players play sometimes poker in not coming back and count on their teammates to recover the ball. And these kind of things you have to train, work day in and day out. And you have to give guidelines with players. But many things depend of the opponent, what type of player you want, and then you have to make choices. Naturally, we saw with Belgium that a player like Yannick Carrasco is a fantastic player in ball possession, but not fulfilling the duty when we lose the ball. And so you can play very offensive, but if you need to defend more, sometimes the choice of another wing back can be more useful.
Excellent. Niran, I will come to you and ask you this pointed question. Many, many years ago, the idea of three at the back, five at the back was a rarity. We saw it, we didn't understand it, but it was there. It was there even when Tom was talking about, as far back as almost 40 years ago. But it wasn't common. These days, though, with the likes of Conte bringing it into the game and a few others, are we starting to lose the era of four-man defense? Is that starting to go away slowly and gradually? Because it seems like if more and more teams seem to now be taking the five-man defense.
Yes, you are right. Compared to well, I wasn't watching football 40 years ago, unfortunately. But as I grow to know about the game in the new millennium, when I started really understanding what the game is about. Of course, I didn't see much. That's why I said I only saw it regularly in Italy, and also so it wasn't really, even in England. I hardly see anything play without playing the back three. But the thing is, I don't see the back four ever going away, because in the modern game, it's more about flexibility of tactics. Teams are attacking in a different formation, they are defending in a different formation. You get, so there are many teams now who play in the back four, and but when they're in possession, it's a back three. I don't know whether you get what I'm saying. And there are teams that play in a back three in possessions where one of the wing backs, one of the full backs goes forward, and then the three others with maybe the right back is going forward, and the left back and the two center backs create a balance and make it a three at the back. Understand? For example, at Arsenal right now, you see Zinchenko in the build-up phase. Zinchenko goes somewhere in like the defensive midfield position, the left defensive mid position, where while Xhaka goes up forward to a map position, Zinchenko fills that space vacated by Xhaka, and then Ben White, Saliba, and Gabriel Magalhaes, they create that balance in the middle to make it a back three. So it creates another dimension. So I don't think the back four will go away, or the back. I think there'll be more and more formations now in use. There'll just be different, more varieties around, but because of the flexibility around now, because you can start with the back four and you are playing 3 different formations in the game. You can start with the back 3 and play different. You get when Arteta came to Arsenal, was playing with the back in the back 3 won the FA Cup in 2020. 2020, yeah, I think 2021. I can't remember 29, 20. Well, playing on the back 3. Is left wing back. His left wing back would join the midfield, and then it becomes a back 4. Join midfield. Even Conte, when Conte was in Chelsea, when he changed his back 3, Azpilicueta would almost go so in the attacking phase. You see sorry, I have an image here that I say. Let me just put it up. Sorry, quickly. I'll put one, but it's not Chelsea, but I think it's another team. Yes, this is Sheffield United. Chris Basham here. If you know Chris Basham is a centre back in the back 5. Baldock is the right wing back. But you can see Basham here is ahead of Baldock, because this kind of the way Azpilicueta was playing those days when Conte was playing the back 3. You see the wing back drag people out or do something, and then the right centre back, which was in this case is Basham. In Conte's team, it was Azpilicueta, would go forward and be putting in those crosses. You understand? So what I'm trying to put about here is that, like, now the flexibility of formations is very, very important in the game. That is the main aspect of the game now. So you cannot just say, oh, we're defending the back 4 and stay like that and defend like that. You attack it. So the flexibility is going to make the formations as we see the basic formations to last longer, to be in the game forever. So I don't think there's going to be any extent of any formation, whether it's a back 3, a back 4, a back 5.
The African scout.
May I just add something also?
Yes.
An example: Guinea-Conakry last year, they played with 4 in the back, but when both wing backs were attacking, they chose to have Diawara dropping from the midfield as a third central defender. So in the real formation, they have 4 in the back, but the defensive midfield player, when both wing backs are attacking, drops as a third central defender. So there's so many variations possible that like Niran say, I think both 4 and 5 in the back will always be there. It's always the creativity of a coach and the quality of players what will make small changes in it. And there will be some hypes and there will be people copying things, but I think it will always return back to the base of football.
Absolutely. And Francis, what I would ask is, in the local game, because we've talked now about our national teams, and it is very easy to adapt for our national teams, most times, to adapt to these changes, because the national teams, all the players are playing at high level and they have experienced that flexibility and versatility when they're playing in their clubs. But unfortunately, in the local game, and I haven't seen enough of it, and I wish I have, because there's not enough evidence. That's why I brought on Namdi, but unfortunately he had to go because he had network issues. But in the local game, we don't have the analytics of the local game just yet. How much work do you think that the coaches are putting, especially from your experience in the local game, if you have any, and from what you can see transcending into the national team, which is making players highly unsuitable to be chosen for the national team because they don't show that flexibility? How much work do you think we should be doing in educating our local coaches in the local teams to actually encourage this flexibility, versatility, so that things can work, better for the team, and they don't sit rigidly on a back four or a back three, thinking that once we start with a back three and a back five, we can't go to a back four? How much work do you think we should be doing?
I think we should be doing quite a bit of work because compared to the olden days, football has really moved. I mean, you've got players who are really technically gifted in how they operate. I'll give you a typical example of how Thierry Henry used to play as a striker. Now, we all know he started as a winger, but what he used to do was he would stay somewhere offside, and then as soon as the ball was played, he'd move back in and catch you. And every time you looked at it, you'd always think he was 4 or 5 yards offside. But he knew how to play as a striker, whereby he'd already had 4 or 5 yards on you to score a goal. I think the same thing as coaches as well. We should be able to get players whereby that's what the training session is for, to train to become better in what we're doing. So you don't just have a left footer who can only use his left foot. When I coach my players, I always try and make sure they use their weaker foot when training, because the opportunity will come where in a real game, it may not fall to their strong foot. So what happens on the weaker foot? That means that chance is completely gone. So I think as local coaches, that's what we should really start laying a lot of emphasis on during our training sessions, is get players who are flexible. If you look at all the good teams around the world now, they have players who can play in different positions. And as a professional, I don't see any reason why you shouldn't be able to. Because if you were working in an office, you wouldn't just be saying, oh, I can only do this and I can't do that. You're supposed to be all-rounded. So for me personally, as coaches locally, I try and encourage some of the other local coaches that, look, you need to get players playing in different positions, trying different things, because in a game where some coaches are so, they can look at you tactically and technically, they've sat down throughout the week and they know your complete weaknesses. So once that happens and you have no variation, the coach just has one over you and they're really just going to probably annihilate you that day. So I kind of think, well, what do? You must always have a plan B. So I tell coaches, I personally, I encourage my players to be versatile.
Niran, while we talk about the fact that coaches in the national game, or in the local leagues rather, need to be educated, we also know that charity that begins at home also begins from the age grade national teams, the under 17s and the under 20s. And if we can teach them that kind of versatility, that kind of ability to be flexible, then of course, Nina, they take it back to their clubs in case the clubs are not doing it for them, and then that makes them the player that we want them to be, right?
Absolutely correct. But it should even start before that. For me, it should start in the grassroots, and the under 15s. Maybe I'll say the under 11s are too young, but maybe the under 15s. But once again, I think the national teams, the age grade national teams, I think we take it so serious. In Africa especially, because maybe because we use it to sell players, so we take it so serious. We don't use it to teach and to allow mistakes to happen and things like that. We take it so serious because we sell players. So maybe the coaches might be scared. They don't want to try things and do those things because because it's very difficult to teach 16-year-olds, 15-year-olds those kind of complexities about the game. When you're attacking the back five, when you're defending the back three, move like this, it's a bit complex for them. They might not be able to know it if they don't start early. So that's the thing. We have to start early. It has to be before the under 17s. It has to be around maybe at latest under 15. So these players can know these things. They can know what they do, what they're going to do when they're going forward, what they're going to do when they're in defense. Because when I was playing football as a 14-year-old, all I knew, I was playing fullback. All I knew was that as a fullback, I had to go up the field to create width and throwing crosses and then run back in defense. And that's still what they know today. That's what they know today, but that's not how football is today. Today, some fullbacks don't even overlap. They stay back throughout the game. We stay back throughout the game while one fullback goes forward. I think to answer your question, I said I think it has to be earlier, and I think in Africa we take the age grade competition so serious. Even the FIFA ones, because we use to sell players. If you see other countries, they don't call their renowned under 17 players to the tournament or under 20 players. They call the ones that are not yet in the national team. They're not yet in the club teams. Maybe they are still playing in academy. For example, if there was an under 20 tournament today, Spain will not call Gavi, and they won't call Pedri. They will look for the ones that are still in the B team. But in Nigeria, we look for our best all over the world, and then we'll call them for the tournament. So that's just the difference. And I don't know. So if we're taking something so serious, how do we allow for those kind of teachings to happen at that age?
The African Football Scouts and Coaches Association presenting you the AFC TV show, African Football Scouts and Coaches Association, AFSCON. I'll never tire of saying it. We are committed to Africanizing the game in Africa, to bringing the game to Africa, to making sure that the game of football is coached according to the tenets of the game, and yes, but also according to the strengths and weaknesses of our peculiar circumstances in Africa. And then if you want to join AFSCON as a coach, as an aspiring scout, just send your details, your name, your details to join@afscon.com, and we will look at it and give you membership if we deem fit. Leave your comments in the comment section. Please, your comments and opinions are very, very important to us. By the same token, your subscription will be great. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter at AFSCON. Follow us on Instagram at AFSCON. And let's keep the conversation going, because what we want to do is change the narrative of football coaching and scouting across Africa. Tom, having said all of that, it's a mouthful, isn't it? All the time when I introduce AFCON, I get tired by the time I'm done, but I enjoy it. Tom, you as a national coach, you go around to local games in the Gambia, and you did so in everywhere that I have known you. You enjoy going around to the local games in Africa to watch the local leagues and to watch the development of the players. We're talking about defensive tactics at the moment, and we know that a lot of coaches, our local coaches, only have one thing in their minds. Some of the things that Nira pointed out are about when he was playing, he only knew what to do, was to go forward. It wasn't because that's all you knew. That's all you were taught. That's all you were told to do. And a stalwart defender who is sitting here on the right side of a back four is told that anything here, just clear it and then wait. Anything here, just clear it.
Exactly.
If it's the ball, clear it. If there's a leg in the way, clear the leg and just stay here. And the other one, you're here. And we haven't introduced the dynamism yet in the game enough to actually transit into the knowledge and the psyche of even our administrators, which is why sometimes when a centre back starts to go forward and one of his midfielders drop here and he goes forward to go and initiate an attack in transition, the administrators are pinching themselves and saying, where does he think he's going? What's he doing? Because
in fact, the coach will shout.
Even the coach in the local team would say, "Go back, go back." Did you find that in the Gambia?
Yeah, first of all, I traveled all over the world, and not only in the African continent, but I saw a lot of football, from professional football to second league to third league to even beach football, and to the smallest ghettos where people are having competitions on small sandy pitches without real rules. When I was national team coach of Togo, there was no local league because of politics, and we had to create a champ team. So we went to really every pitch on every street corner to find players, and then selected 150 guys, and step by step I went down to 25. So I saw really football also in Gambia on all these levels, and it's so that the problem is, and Francis and Niram already discussed that, we lack in African football the development, first of all, of players. If we play on the beach football from our 4 years old till our 15, then there are no rules. Then it's about having fun, making nice dribbles. The guy who's technically the best or physically the strongest, he will win. And if you win 7-5 or you lose 8-3, it doesn't matter on the end of the evening. You had a lot of fun. You played several hours football, and that's how we develop, or how the majority of the players are developed, who become later professional players and even national team players. So they never were taught. My daughter is 6 years old and is now in Belgium, already her third year in a football club. Now last year they played 2 against 2. Now they play 3 against 3, and the coaches will teach them. The one in the center has to be in the center. The wings have to be in the wings. That's already taught on 6-year-old tactically. That the African players, the majority of the African players, never got. So the work, like Francis said, is very important for a coach to work. You work daily base. We spoke about national team, but as a club coach, you have much more influence on the development of players. You work on daily base with them, not only their physics, not only their techniques, but you can teach them how to move, which position, which distances, when one infiltrated, who take the position, what you expect about overlapping, and how to do it, when not to overlap, where a cross has to come. All these things you are ready to work with the team. And a preseason normally is about 6 weeks. When you are in your first team, then you have 6 weeks not only to drill them physically, but also to bring a plan A, plan B, and even a plan C, depending what is needed in the season. So, and that is lacking at the moment in football, in African football, also not only in African. Why? Because the majority of the coaches see themselves as Stefan Keshi, see themselves as Mourinho, see themselves as the big coaches in Europe, and are only focused on winning, on being the best, and how they are portrayed in the media or by the local public, instead of building a team and building players for newer and greater heights. It can be also the stress of a board who demand immediately results. But as a coach, if you can develop players, even if they're already 18, 20 years, you can still develop, you can still teach them tactically. And that has to happen. And that you don't see. Gambian football clubs have no youth development. There are a few academies, but the clubs who play Premier League have no youth development. So you see very attractive games for general public. The game go up and down, and you see a lot of players making nice dribbles and nice actions. But on the end, also it's not sufficient to play international football or to play in Europe, where the tactical knowledge is demanded. And I think if we want not only develop these extra special players to succeed, but who make every player who play in Nigeria able to play in Europe, make every player who play in Gambia to play in Europe, because most of the time the skills and the physical qualities are there. But if we can also teach them the tactical knowledge regarding their position and the team tactics, we make a more complete player. And in 2012, you remember, I was appointed technical director of the Nigerian Federation. I never started the duty, but in that time already suggested that we need in every region, in every province, we need academies guided by the federation, a very good local coach education, because something we have to say also is a good youth coach, a good development coach is something totally different than a first team coach. And we underestimate the role of a development coach. And it's much more difficult to be a good youth coach than to be a very good first team coach, because a youth coach has to teach the player not only the technical skills but also the tactical skills according to the age and the development in it. And I think we have to put much more efforts in that to teach players on the age of 13, 14, 15, 16 what is needed in the game. And as a first team coach, you have to work on that, because in local league football, and sure, there are other teams who are performing well, but you will never, the time that Inyimba won the Champions League is far past us. Now it are always the North African teams or the South African teams who reach far. And it's not because of the quality, it's more the tactical awareness of the teams what makes now the difference in African football.
Thank you very much. That's a lot to take in. I wish people are listening to us, the people that matter, who will actually act on it, so that we will be able to go from there. Now we're coming to the latter stages of this this show. Very enjoyable. Back 3, back 4. You know, sometimes I'll tell you something. As a coach, it's easy to watch games and decide, oh yeah, okay, you can switch to back 3 or back 4. But sometimes when it's not going well, when it's back 4, you're thinking, why is he doing back 4? And if it's back 3, like yesterday, my beloved team Chelsea, when they were being trolloped by lowly Fulham, for goodness sake, in the Premier League, I was thinking, what formation is this guy playing? Why can't he switch? But I know that if he switched and we still lost, I'll still be saying, what formation did he play? Okay, now I'll tell you, I have a poser for you guys. And this is what's going to round off the show. Francis, I'm going to ask you, it's not for my benefit. I know what I do, but we're doing it for the benefit of our members of the African Football Scouts and Coaches Association, who want to learn more about the game and learn more about scouting. You are a scout, you've sent your scout out, and your scout has come back to tell you that this team that you're playing against is playing with 2 strikers, maybe in a 4-4-2 or 5-3-2 or whatever. Now, because we're talking about 4 at the back with 2 centre backs, are you going to set up, at least to start the game and watch it and see how it plays out, with 2 centre backs to take charge of these 2 strikers? Or you're going to deploy a third one so that you outnumber them? What would you do? And what would you say? At least when you start the game. You can change in the middle of the game, but would you set up with 3 centre backs because there are 2 strikers, or are you going to set up with 3? Francis.
I would still keep it 2. I would play to our strengths. What I may try and change would be either the right back or the left back to tuck in, depending on where the attack is coming from. I'd also might want to employ a holding midfielder just in case. But I would go with our strengths. If I feel that maybe the person up front, he probably has the beating of our centre half, I'd probably deploy a centre midfielder to sit rather than bring in another centre half in. Because I think if I bring in another centre half in, I'm more creating pressure on the team, and it makes it difficult when we have the ball to create an offensive chance. So I'd probably leave my centre halves like that, but I'd bring a midfielder to just tuck in slightly and not to go too much forward.
Right. Tom, your scout comes to you, Tom, and says to you that this team has identified you as an attacking threat. So they're going to sit back and play 5-4-1. They're going to sit back and play 5-4 with only one man up top. Meanwhile, you are Tom Saintfiet, and you want to play with 5 men at the back. Now, to the layman, are you not wasting all these resources over this one person?
Yeah, I probably will not play with 5 in the back at that circumstances. On the other side, it's also a way to try to make a trap for the opponent. If they expect you to play very attacking and to take risks and to overlap and play with a lot of people on their half, remember how Chelsea won the Champions League several years ago, how they beat Barcelona in the semi-final, if I remember. Barcelona had no answer, and that was one of the best teams in the world at that time. So it's not easy to play against the wall. There are 2 options. Or if you have a very good target man who is always available in the air to win that fight, you can play with that type of player. Barcelona didn't have it and had to knock the ball very fast around, but couldn't create the space. The other option is playing a little bit poker and trying to not take too much initiative, try to still get the opponent out of the team. But if they play with 1 striker, I would keep with 4 people in the back and let the wing backs be more offensive, because you want to have the movements to create the people out of position, and it would be naturally maybe a little bit waste if you have 3 men in the back against 1. It depends if there's a number 10 coming fast up, and it depends also if you're 3 men in the back, because naturally you can play still with 3 in the back, but let 1 infiltrate to the midfield depending of his qualities in ball possession, and then you come again with only 2 in the central defense. So it depends really of the quality of players you have available. But if a team plays very defensive football, it's quite difficult. We saw it with Morocco in AFCON. It's quite difficult to create opportunities against them. Or you need a target man, or you need a lot of changes of positions. And then it could be even that you play with 3, but that the wing backs, maybe even 2 wing backs, 1-on-1, infiltrate in the midfield and let other people move up. So there are a lot of varieties, but it all depends on the quality of players you have.
Excellent. Well, the African Football Scouts and Coaches Association has brought it to you again. 1 hour has flown by very, very quickly, and we can talk about this thing for another hour, and we will not be tired, but we're going to have to go. Thank you very much, guys, for joining us. Remember, for you watching us, you want to join AFCON and you want to be a part of this, join at afcon.com is the email address. Just join at afcon.com. Just send your details, your name, your number, your details to join at afcon.com. What do we stand for? We stand for bringing credibility, integrity, respect, professionalism, and Africanism into the high-level scouting and coaching of football in Africa by Africans. We are backed by people who care about the game, who want the game to grow, who want us to do much better than we are doing on the global stage. And we are going to be committed to coming back here every now and again to talk about the growth of the game, to teach people, to give additional knowledge, expertise through experience to people so that we can take it back to Africa. And even if we're not in charge of our own clubs and countries, we can go and ask questions of the people who are in charge. Don't forget as well, very soon, we will come up with coaching clinics and certification courses that will be taking place all through the year from various parts of the world. One of our major resource persons is Tom Saintfiet, who, like I said to you the other time, is a de facto, you can't even decline it, even if you tried, a de facto patron of the African Football Scouts and Coaches Association. He will be a huge resource person, happy always to disperse his knowledge, impart his knowledge. I tell you what, he shared with me, and he didn't tell me to tell you this, guys. He shared with me when Morocco got to the semi-final of the World Cup, he shared with me text messages that he had with the coaching crew of Morocco, where he was giving them tips and they were thanking him as soon as they qualified for the semi-final, because he wasn't in charge of Morocco. He knew that he wasn't in a job there, but he still wanted them to do well. So, you know, when we pick our allies, when we pick our partners, when we pick our patrons, it's not because we like their faces. I don't like Tom's face, actually. He actually bullies me. I remember going to a restaurant with him and he didn't let me eat my food in peace. But it's not because of that. It's because they really care about us. They really care about the continent. So join at AFCON.com. It will be fun. It will be great. And you will see us doing many, many, many coaching courses and programs in the course of the year that is coming, in the course of the year that has come up on. Jesus, we're already in 2023. Francis, where did the year go?
I wish I knew. You know, before you know it, we'll be celebrating Christmas again.
Oh, don't
And
tell
you
me that.
and you'll be able to eat your Christmas pudding as long as Tom allows you to.
He will. I'm sure he will. By then he will. He's got no choice. He's got no choice. Miran, I want to say thank you very much for all your hard work. As always, it's been great. We will be back again. We'll be back again with another tactical thing, with our little tactical board and his little gizmo that he showed us on video just now. And yeah, Tom, as always and as ever, busy schedule and all that, but you still made time to come and talk to us today, and I'm grateful, really grateful. Thank you so much. Guys, we'll see you again soon. Everyone, please remember, subscribe to AFCON YouTube channel, AFCON AFC on YouTube. Like this video, just give it a tick. Just give it a tick. What does it cost? And subscribe to us. Click the notification button because we'll be back very soon. Thank you very much and have a good weekend. Cheers, everyone.
Guys.
Bye. Have a good weekend, all.
Thank you.